All right. Welcome. We call to order the City Council meeting of the City of Atascadero for February 9th. And we will have Councilmember Charles Borbeau lead us in a pledge to the flag.
All right. I'm going to rise and please join me in saluting our nation's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Charles. And roll call, please.
Councilmember Borbeau.
Here.
Councilmember Darris.
Here.
Councilmember Funk.
She is on her way in.
I see her. Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Newsom.
Here.
Mayor Moreno.
Here.
All present.
I think Susan is muted.
She is here now. All right, good. We got the whole team. Well, welcome if you are watching or listening to our City Council meeting tonight. We're so glad that you're here. If you want to speak at any time during our meeting, whether it is the time set aside for community forum or during public comment for one of the items that's on the agenda, you can do that in a few ways. If you're on this webinar, we'll let you know when to raise your hand. You can also call in to 805-538-2888 and make public comment via phone. And you can simply be on the phone and listen. And then when you want to give public comment, we will let you know how to do that. When you call, do please let us know which item it is that you would like to speak on. And once again, that number tonight is 805-538-2888. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Also move.
I'll second.
Great. We have a motion by Councilmember Borbeau, a second by Councilmember Darris, and we will waive the reading in full of all ordinances that are appearing on this agenda. And the titles of the ordinances will be read aloud by the city clerk at the first reading, after the motion, and before the council votes. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Borbeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Darris.
Yes.
Councilmember Funk.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Newsom.
Yes.
Mayor Moreno.
Yes, ma'am.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And now we're moving on to our presentations. We have a couple of them, and we'll start with a proclamation presented to RISE, recognizing February as Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. And Councilmember Funk will deliver that.
I would be delighted to. Will that be displayed on the screen, or can somebody email me the proclamation?
Laura has it held up right here.
Okay.
You should have it in your email, Susan, to read.
I have requested that, but did not receive that.
It went over about 45 minutes ago. Let's see.
I did get the revised email working, but have not received it, and did send an extra request for that.
Okay. Yeah, it went out on 5:06. I will go ahead and send that to you again. Maybe something got, I was going to say funky there.
That's happened.
That's not the first time you've heard that.
Were we all supposed to get it, Heather?
No, this is Councilmember Funk's.
Okay, I was just gonna say, because I didn't receive it either, so I just.
Yeah, no. So hopefully you've got it there.
Yes, it is just arriving. So if we are patient, and folks should know that the city just did an upgrade to its email system. And so there have been a few technical glitches along the way as we're all getting adapted to that.
Yes.
But it would be my honor to read this proclamation announcing this is a proclamation that February 2021 is Teen Dating Violence Awareness and Prevention Month. Whereas Teen Dating Violence Awareness and Prevention Month calls attention to the fact that dating violence is widespread and impacts every young person in San Luis Obispo County. And whereas, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, 1 in 11 female teens and 1 in 15 male teens reported experiencing physical violence in the last year. And whereas rates of dating violence affect LGBTQ plus youth at rates higher than cisgender and heterosexual peers. And whereas teen dating violence has been linked to other forms of violence and aggression, and survivors are more likely to suffer from eating disorders, drug and alcohol use, dropout, teen pregnancy, future abusive relationships, and suicide. And whereas nearly half of students who experience dating violence have reported that some of the abuse took place on school grounds. And whereas Rise and Stand Strong continue to provide a safe environment for young people affected by teen dating violence, with crisis intervention, counseling, legal services, safe emergency housing, and local community prevention programs, such as Close to Home, Coaching Boys into Men, and Athletes Leaders. And whereas the establishment of Teen Dating Violence Awareness and Prevention Month will benefit schools, communities, families, and all youth. And whereas the city of Atascadero joins Rise, Close to Home, and other advocates and communities across the country in taking action to prevent dating violence, and acknowledges that each day of the year is an opportunity to create change for the future. Now, therefore, on behalf of the City Council and in recognition of the important work done by dating violence programs, the City of Atascadero does hereby proclaim the month of February as Teen Dating Violence Awareness and Prevention Month, and supports communities to empower teens to develop healthy and violence-free relationships throughout their lives. Signed by Heather Moreno, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Funk. And I will ask our city clerk, did we have someone from Rise here who would like to make a few remarks? Ms. Sargent, hello.
Hi, how are you all?
We're
Bye.
doing great. Thank you for joining us this evening. Would
Thank
you.
you.
Like to say a few words?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. As you mentioned, my name is Janae Sargent. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Prevention Education Manager at RISE, the county's Sexual Assault and Intimate Partner Violence Resource Center. As 2020 and COVID-19 have swept the nation and the world, they have left long-lasting impacts on our communities. While we've all experienced immeasurable hurt, these impacts, there are few who have felt these impacts more than our young people. It's difficult to express the prevalence of teen dating violence without first acknowledging that our youth today face more risks of violence than they have in the majority of their lifetimes. Whether they're sheltering at home with abusive families, battling mental health crises, or seeking community in online spaces, it's more important now than ever that we listen to the teens in our lives to prevent violence that many of them could and do face, whether we know it or not. According to the National Sexual Violence Resource Center, 1 in 3 teens will experience some form of dating violence before they turn 18. Of them, only 1/3 talk to an adult about what they went through. RISE offers free and confidential services for youth 12 and older who've experienced any form of intimate violence, with a 24-hour hotline, crisis support, free counseling, and prevention education. Like is the case for many other organizations in SLO County, COVID-19 has made it harder than ever for RISE to connect young people to life-changing services. In 2019, RISE served 184 youth clients and offered healthy relationship workshops to more than 900 students. In 2020, youth clients fell to 139, and preventionists were only able to deliver 4 of the workshops they had before the pandemic hit. While the education system was flipped on its head, RISE preventionists have worked with volunteers to create safe and supportive virtual spaces, offering youth a way to connect while sheltering at home. These creative spaces have been powerful for many of the youth we work with, but they don't do enough to close the gap our community is experiencing right now. With millions of young people feeling disconnected from their communities, it's on the adults around them to reach out and create pathways for communication. It's more important now than ever to reach out to teens in our lives, be a pillar of support for them, come to them, ask them what they need, and provide a judgment-free listening space. It means more than many of us realize. At the end of the day, teen dating violence won't end just by talking about it for 1 month out of the year. You can find out how to make lasting change and support the youth in San Luis Obispo County by connecting with a RISE educator and asking how you can show up for young people in your life. You can email education@riseslow.org for more information, and you can always pass out our information to anyone that you know, whether they're a survivor, a friend, a family, or a loved one. We'll also have an art show showcasing youth voices, youth-made art across the county at Bliss Cafe in San Luis Obispo. Some of the pieces are from students at Atascadero High School, and they were created before the pandemic hit. So if you're in San Luis Obispo, stop by Bliss. You can check out the art, contribute to our community art, and even buy one to support some local youth. Thank you so much for this proclamation and for making time for us and for showing up for the youth in your lives. We appreciate it.
Well, and we appreciate you, Ms. Sargent, and the entire RISE team. Your organization is a tremendous asset to this community and to some of those who are most in need. And we really very much appreciate you. So thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You as well. And now we will move on to our second presentation, which is to our outgoing planning commissioners. And we actually have several of those. And so I do see Dwayne. Okay, good. You brought them on as panelists. So I see Dwayne Anderson and Jan Wolf here. Do we have Tom Zirk or Mike Shaw by any chance on the phone, or are they attending and I just don't see them?
No, I don't see them attending either.
Okay. Well, we got Dwayne and Jan. Take yourself off, or put yourself on video too. We want to see you. And so, hey, you two. So we're going to go ahead and start with, I'll ask Mayor Pro Tem Newsom to say a few words about outgoing Commissioner Mike Shaw.
Mike Shaw was a Atascadero Planning Commissioner from 2019 to 2021. In addition to serving on the Planning Commission, Mike also served the community as a member of the city's Citizens Sales Tax Oversight Committee and as a board member of the Cuesta College Foundation. He also was on the North County Economic Foundation and is a longtime member of Atascadero Kiwanis and is a devoted community volunteer. Mike's always stepped up to the plate and spent many of time volunteering his knowledge, his experience, and just his insight to better his community. So at this time, I'd like to say that I have enjoyed serving with Mike Shaw and that I want to thank him for his service to the city as well as our community. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. And yes, Mike, thank you from all of us. We appreciate your commitment to the city these past couple of years. And then I will ask Councilmember Bourbeau to say a few words about outgoing Commissioner Zirk.
Well, thank you. Yes, I first met Tom when I joined Rotary, and he was the incoming president, and he immediately assigned me to a committee. So I returned the favor and made him a planning commissioner. And Tom has been my appointed planning commissioner for the last 4 years. And I appreciated the time and effort that Tom has put in, and Tom is been part of a number of other activities in the community, in addition to being the Rotary Club president. He was a longtime treasurer of Loaves and Fishes, along with other things. And if Tom was here, I'd just say thank you. I'll be seeing Tom tomorrow, I'm sure, at Rotary, and we'll thank him then again. And I appreciate that he's done it. And while I'm here, since I was on the planning commission, I'd also like to thank Dwayne and Jan and some of the others who are leaving now, who were on the planning commission when I was. You guys were great to serve with and always did a great job.
Thank you, Councilmember Bourbeau. And I will, since we don't have Councilmember Fonzie here any longer to say a few words, Jan Wolf, Commissioner Wolf, was appointed by Councilmember Fonzie in 2013. And interestingly enough, Jan was not the first member of her family to serve on the city's planning commission. Her uncle Don Hanauer, is that how you say his last name? Hanauer?
Yes.
Served as a commissioner back in 1988 to 1993. So how fun there. Jan, I hear, is retiring so that she can spend time with a new puppy that is taking up a lot of time. But Jan, I've really appreciated your dedication and your commitment to serve. I really appreciate in the times that I've listened to the Planning Commission, some of your things about, hey, we want to make sure the public is really notified on this. I'm not seeing as many people here. How do we really get this word out? You really want to make sure people were included in that way. And you certainly had a business-friendly and no-nonsense approach. I've always appreciated that about you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Would you like to say a few words?
I would like to say that it was an absolute pleasure and honor to serve. And I'd like to reiterate, we talked about this last week, but our planning department is just top notch. We're very, very blessed. Phil, Kelly, John, Mariah, and Annette. And working with everyone was just a pleasure. And working with all my fellow commissioners, planning commissioners, was just a really wonderful experience. And thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you for serving these past 8 years. And to Dwayne, I know I got that phone call that day when he said, I think 8 years is good. And I went, no, but yet I understand at the same time. It's definitely a commitment, and I really appreciated you. Well, just as a friend and someone I've known for a long time, and I really appreciated you on the Planning Commission. You've also served on the Design Review Committee. And I know that this is something that you said at the commission last week, but it's been something that's been important to you. You are a man of few words, and you speak when it's necessary. And I've always appreciated that about you. And you've certainly done that in the public arena. And I think it's something that's really important. So thank you for doing that. And I know that when you came onto the commission, your goal was to bring a common sense, thoughtful, very considered approach to the commission. And you did just that. You and Jan came on at a time when we were still just kind of coming off a very tumultuous time with with council, with the business community, and just kind of really getting things going in a right direction and streamlined. And I really appreciate both of you being a part of it then, and bringing us, being part of coming in this direction of streamlining and being much more business friendly. And so thank you for being a part of that, and thank you for your willingness to serve.
Well, it was my honor to do this. And as you said, when I first started, I think there was an opportunity to sort of redirect the Planning Commission and the DRC, and common sense, I think, is correct. When I was asked to do that, I kept saying, well, I don't think I have any qualifications. And several people said, well, you seem to have common sense. And actually, I think that worked out well, because it became apparent that my goal partly was to create an atmosphere where people coming to do business in our city did not feel overwhelmed by the whims of people, but more like by just something they could count on, the way the city operates. And so I think the greatest thing that I heard, and I know it was great for the staff as well, was especially in the DRC, because that's when people first come, and it's the getting their feet wet with what the dealing with the city is going to be like. And more than once, people would say, your city is really easy to work with. And that's what you want, because if you want your city to thrive, you need people to want to be here. And so I felt very rewarded in that, in the Planning Commission and in the DRC, we managed to pull that off. And definitely echoing what Jan said, the staff is a big part of that, making clarity part of the thing and making our job easy to do well. How's that sound? So anyway, it was my honor. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And I think, don't we have some things to, oh, there we go. The, well, it's not an obelisk, it's a square. Diamond?
A diamond. Yes,
diamond.
We're giving them diamonds. We do
Diamonds.
have a diamond for each of the outgoing commissioners,
Nice.
thanking them for all of their volunteer hours. I don't think people have any idea how many hours our planning commissioners put into the job. And so just want to say thank you.
Thank you very much, Rochelle.
Thank you.
Dwayne, Jan, thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
And now you can go enjoy your evening.
Mayor,
All
Okay.
right.
Yes.
Oh,
Hold
wait,
on,
did-
hold on.
Do we not have another, do
No,
we
do
not
it.
have another departing or recently departed?
I do. Hold on.
Okay, okay.
But Dwayne and Jan, I will let you guys go and feel free to go back to attendees or go enjoy your evening.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
now we have our longest standing planning commissioner, 10 years, I believe. I think you came on right as I went out, Mark. And so we're not doing like a formal, you don't get the diamond, right? You just like, your gift is that you're now on the city council.
Thank you. Oh, what a gift.
But yes, Mark has served on the Planning Commission, also the Design Review Committee, also on some countywide boards. And so we really appreciate the last 10 years that you have dedicated to the city. And so grateful that you stepped up to bring your voice to the council level. And we all look forward to serving with you over the next term.
Well, thank you so much. And all the people that were honored today, I think I've served with every one of them. Charles and Jan and Dwayne and even Tom. I think that's everybody. I served with all of them. I've really enjoyed getting to know all of them on a personal level and working with them on the Planning Commission. And as I believe Jan said, yeah, we are certainly blessed to have such a talented group working in the planning department. I've always been impressed with their reports and the knowledge that they have. You know, we sometimes barrage them with questions at the Planning Commission. They're not prepared for it and they have an answer right on the spot. And I've always been impressed with that. So we do have a really good city staff for all this stuff. And I've been impressed, and that's why I'm happy to serve on the city council and work my way up in this chain and continue to serve. But I think we've got a great staff, and thank you all for everything, and thank you for the recognition. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. All right. Heather's like,
and the DRC. Thank you, Heather, and on the DRC because I served Heather as well. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's been
all right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
You, however, do not get the chance to go to attendee mode and go on with the rest of your evening.
Right.
I know. I got to stay here. Okay.
Exactly. Well, wonderful. It's bittersweet to say goodbye to folks, but we also have some new incoming ones, and it's going to be a busy couple of years, that is for sure. So now we will move on to the consent calendar, and the consent calendar consists of items that are considered routine and non-controversial by city staff and can be approved in one motion if no member of the council or the public wishes to pull an item for comment or question. So with that, I will look to my colleagues to see if there's any member of the council wishing to pull a consent calendar item. Seeing none, or I saw someone come off mute. No. All right, seeing none, I will go to the attendees. And if you are on the line on the webinar here and would like to pull an item, if you would please raise your hand. And I will ask Luke if we have any callers on the phone that wish to address any of the consent items.
We do not.
Thank you. And then I will ask our city clerk, Laura, do we have any members of the public who have written in comment on the consent calendar?
No.
Okay, so seeing that no one wishing to pull a consent calendar item, I will bring it back to the council and look for a motion.
I'll move approval of the consent calendar.
I'll second.
I see a motion by Council Member Bourbeau and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Newsom. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Bourbeau,
Yes.
Councilmember Darris,
Yes.
Councilmember Funk,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Newsom,
Yes.
Mayor Moreno.
Yes, ma'am.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And now we'll move on to updates from our city manager, Ms. Rickard.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Can you see my screen?
We see
All
your
right.
screen just fine. Yes.
Perfect. The first thing I want to talk about tonight is hashtag A Town with Heart. Over 4,000 hearts are being displayed all around downtown to celebrate Valentine's Day, including here at City Hall and at the middle school too. Janet Wallace of O'Leary Wallace Law Firm came up with an idea for businesses to show their love for the downtown by putting up hearts everywhere. She presented her plan to the Business Improvement District and everyone loved it. So visiting the downtown, you will see all of the hearts displayed everywhere. And it's a great opportunity for everyone to come show some love and support for our downtown businesses. A different way to celebrate Valentine's Day is our annual Charles Paddock Zoo Valentine's Day gift idea. If you're not sure what to give your loved one or not so loved one, you can get that special someone a very unique Valentine this year. For just $5, you can have a Madagascar hissing cockroach from the zoo named after them. You can name your hissing cockroach any creative or clever name that you would like. You'll receive a certificate officially naming the cockroach that you can then give to your Valentine. And then, depending how you really feel about them, I guess you can even tune into our zoo's social media to see the meerkats devour the tasty cockroaches. So just go to the zoo's website or Facebook page to find all about how to order this special Valentine's gift. I also want to tell you about some changes we have going on down here in the downtown. So Traffic Records and Bland Solar, they're two neighboring businesses. They're going to be switching spots. So Traffic Records has moved and is now open in the larger space with more room to spread out, just 2 doors down from their previous location. And Bland Solar will move into the Traffic Record space. So it's great, especially with COVID. You can still visit some of our indoor retail shops, shop there, and shop local. Right now, we have kicked off our Atascadero Know Your Zone campaign. We're very proud to introduce this emergency evacuation program, which was identified as a priority by the City Council in your 2019 strategic planning session for the 2019-21 planning window. And in the event of a wildfire or other emergency, law enforcement and fire agencies may issue evacuation warnings or orders for the impacted area. These notices will be by zone, so it's important to know your evacuation zone. To obtain your zone information, go to www.atascadero.org/fire and click on Know Your Zone. It's very easy. You can also sign up for Sheriff Department notifications, which will help with 911 and evacuation notices to your cell phone in an emergency. So lots of good information there. We're sending out mailers and different things so that everybody can figure out what zone they're in and have it posted. And then Measure D20 status update. Since January 12th, we've held a total of 9 study sessions as promised as we put this on the ballot. These 9 study sessions were set up to hear from the community about how they believe these funds should be spent. We got a lot of really great and thoughtful input. We had a lot of good conversations. The sessions were very well attended and a lot of different things were discussed. We're now gathering all of that input we received during those sessions that will be presented to the council at the strategic planning session, which will be on February 19th and 20th. At that strategic planning session, council will be taking all of that input and setting those high level goals and priorities. While D20 is going to be a great shot in the arm, it's not going to be able to solve everything here in the city. So it's important that council sets priorities for that. On the March 9th meeting, council will either confirm or adjust the direction provided at the strategic planning meeting. So that'll be another chance for public input. Then it kind of goes into staff hands where we will be working on various plans and cost for a lot of the different things to address those priorities. And we'll come back to the council at the April 27th meeting where the council will be presented with an action plan and the council will approve that. Those things incorporated in the action plan for both the D20 funds and really all city funds. This is important for all city funds. It's a process we always go to. We just went to this extra length. We had promised to do that as part of placing this on the ballot. We're trying to really get that input, and honestly, it's work. In addition to the action plan and the budget, there'll be a number of finance committee meetings. The Citizens Oversight Committee, which will be looking at the D20 funds, will also be participating in those finance committee meetings and will be helping with reporting on the D20 funds, where they're spent, what was achieved, and how we go. So the citizens will eventually get an annual report. We hope to send one out in July once the council has adopted the budget and set the plans for where the funds will going. After that, we will do an annual report for the whole community, similar to the F14 annual report, talking about some of the achievements, general where the funds were spent and other information that people have an interest in knowing. I have received some questions on when will that go into effect. That goes into effect on April 1st. The city will receive their first payment or check from the state on that, hopefully in June or July of this year. The local businesses will receive notifications from the State Board of Equalization about implementing the 1% D20 sales tax increase. So if you're a business, start looking for that notice because it should be coming. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
Thank you, Ms. Rickard. Are there any questions from the council? I see none. I want to say a tremendous thank you to you and to the rest of the staff. I know that this was something additional that was placed on your already very stretched schedules, but it was important, and you took the time to really put together a very good informational video to talk and have questions, answer questions of the public, and to have those breakout sessions. And I got feedback from so many people that were so surprised at what we had put together, and really had so many compliments for, and Rochelle, your name came up a lot, but people really appreciated it and found so much value in it. So thank you all for doing this, because I know the time you spent on this, it wasn't as though the other stuff didn't get done. You just had more on your schedule during that time. So thank you. It was very important.
Well, thank you, Mayor. And thank you especially to everybody who did take the time to come out and participate in those. I know it was an hour-and-a-half commitment for each of those that did participate from the community. And we appreciated them spending the time as much as they appreciated us spending the time. So it was a very productive and positive experience. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will move on to community forum, and this is the portion of the meeting that is reserved for persons who want to address the council on any matter that is not on our agenda and over which the council has jurisdiction. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes, and we've turned on the timer, so speakers will know when their time is up. A maximum of 30 minutes will be allowed for community forum this evening. And please do state your name for the record before making your comments. And with that, I will go to the attendees here, and I see we have somebody on the phone with a hand raised. Luke, are you able, is this the webinar or calling in, like a call in from the webinar, or is this somebody in Zoom?
No, so this is our call-in number.
Oh, fabulous. Okay, so I'll let you bring the individual online.
Yeah, so our first caller is Lauren.
And if you want to put the timer on, Luke, that would be great. Welcome, Lauren.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Lauren Handley, and I'm a North County resident and graduate from Atascadero High School. So thank you for hearing me today. And a special thank you to Councilmember Newsome for being our child care liaison. I am here for We Are the Care initiative. And again, my name is Lauren. As the COVID-19 pandemic has progressed throughout our community and the entire nation, child care programs have been suffering, and many are on the brink of closing their doors for good. Thankfully, the newfound awareness of the critical role childcare plays in the vitality of our economy is making a difference. There is now an allocation of $10 billion for the childcare industry in the recent COVID relief package. While this recognition of the importance of childcare is a helpful start, Myra Jones-Taylor, Chief Policy Officer of the nonprofit 0 to 3, has called it only a stopgap and stated that at least $57 billion is needed to truly support childcare in the long term. Of the $10 billion allocated funding, approximately $1 billion has been designated for California. Unfortunately, again, this is not nearly enough to support an already extremely fragile industry within our state. Many of our childcare professionals operate their own small businesses, either centers or family childcare homes, and require the same focus and attention as all small businesses in our community. We ask that when this council makes decisions about small business sectors in the city of Atascadero, you remember the essential childcare sector among them. We Are the Care is excited to announce the creation of a new task force, Power to the Profession. This task force will focus on elevating early childhood care and education professionals, both in terms of their compensation and their recognized value in our community. This county struggles to recruit and retain qualified childcare professionals. Potential workers are unable to afford the cost of living here due to low wages, and childcare programs are unable to increase employee wages due to the effect it has on cost for families. Simply put, teachers can't afford to stay, and parents can't afford to pay. More than ever, our communities are aware of how much our economy depends on the talent, creativity, and dedication of our early care and educational professionals. They deserve respect for their role in all of our lives, and We Are the Care is committed to helping mobilize community-wide solutions. For more information on the new Power to the Profession Task Force and other task forces, or for ways to get involved with We Are the Care, please contact First 5 San Luis Obispo County or go to www.first5slo.org. Thank you again so much for your time, and we'll be back soon with more updates.
Thank you, Ms. Handley. Luke, do we have anyone else who is on the phone that wishes to provide public comment?
We do not.
Okay, and I am not seeing anyone else on the webinar. If you change your mind, please raise your hand, and I will go to our city clerk right now and ask her to read I think we got a couple of items via email, and then I'll come back to the webinar. And you're muted, Laura.
Thank you. Okay. I am submitting this statement in reference to the Oak Ridge Estates residential project in 3F Meadows. The construction at Oak Ridge Estates has continued. I still contend that the city issued building permits without Castle Rock development meeting the conditions of approval. The PD 11 reads, the following road shall be fully improved to a rural hillside collection section, City Standard 404, or as approved by the city engineer prior to the issuance of building permits. Excuse me. The structural section shall be based on a TI equal to 5.0. B, San Marcos Road from the project boundary to the intersection of Senegal Road prior to phase 1. A, Senegal Road from the project boundary to the intersection of San Marcos Road prior to phase 2. There is a typo that reverses the first and second subsections. Again, I don't believe that the city staff that wrote this section didn't intend for Senegal Road to be open to traffic. This issue shows that the city is continuing to show Castle Rock development preference. Maybe it will take a judge to determine the city staff's intent. Personally, I would prefer that Senegal Road be kept closed and the size of the project be limited by San Marcos Road's capacity of 500 average daily trips. That would restrict the number of houses built to 50. I have been following Oak Ridge Estates for the last 15 years. I didn't realize until recently that 75% of the houses in the project are to be built in phase 1 and phase 2. The completion of phase 2 triggers Castle Rock Development's obligation to restore and repair San Marcos Road. My new projection is that Castle Rock Development never completes phase 2 and thus avoids its obligation to rebuild San Marcos Road. This projection is made more viable by the fact that there are a number of unbuildable lots within the project. Castle Rock Development will have to balance its profits on the number of houses it can build against how much it will take to bring San Marcos Road back up to standard. Castle Rock Development will leave the city of Atascadero, in other words, the people of Atascadero, to bring the road back up to standard. This is, of course, on top of the need for the city to rebuild Los Altos Road, which is in very bad condition due to Castle Rock construction traffic. The city approved the Oak Ridge Estate project without any consideration for the money it would take to rebuild offsite infrastructure and totally ignoring the safety of its citizens. One more quick thing, the K-rails that are holding back the landslide on San Marcos Road are restricting traffic. They are on a blind curve and making the road dangerous. The situation should be rectified for the safety of those driving and walking on that section of San Marcos Road. These issues aren't going away. For more information about Oak Ridge Estates, please go to www.roadto41.com. Again, www.roadto41.com. Thank you. This was submitted by Mitch Paskin. Okay, I will move on to the second one. This is from Haley Matson, a Atascadero homeowner and local business owner. Dear Atascadero City Council, on Saturday, February 6th, I attended the Sales Tax Measure D20 Community Oversight Study Session. The session started with a video that went over several options that the 1% sales tax could be allocated for. The one main point that stood out to me throughout the video was the urgent need for funding that each department is facing. A surprising aspect to the community for those who attended was to see that the money for the 1% sales tax, which was heavily marketed for police and fire, was now being considered for other needs that the city sees as a priority. With that said, the needs that were addressed were not out of line. However, as a tax-paying resident, I feel it is crucial that these funds go directly to police, fire, and emergency services, as the city officials, police, and fire associations and council members all stated they would go to and noted as the reason why it was added to the ballot in the first place. I did appreciate the session and felt it was extremely well organized and allowed the community a voice. I thank all who were a part of putting it together. I know it is a lot of work. Understanding budgets and finances, I voted against the 1% sales tax, and not because I'm against police and fire. On the contrary, I am 100% in support of police, fire, and emergency services. What I am not in favor of is having an open tax measure with no oversight, terms, or sunset clause that allows residents to know exactly where the money is allocated to, nor a time frame to use it. No mention of who is accountable for reporting the use of funds to the community, what tracking system will be used to measure it, and when it will end. I am not comfortable with the notion of trusting the council will do the right thing, as one council member stated. As the city's business partner, which all of the residents are, we all have a part in the decisions that are made, hence the oversight sessions. These are the same questions I would ask if I was investing in any other company. Why would I invest in a business that is not financially sound or has the ability to be transparent with its records? I would not. What I ask for today is, when you are considering all the feedback from the study sessions, that 1, you make good on what you sold to the residents during the election and allocate the funds directly to police, fire, and emergency services. 2, create a game plan with an end or a sunset clause to readdress the 1% sales tax. If the tax is still needed, address that with the community, celebrate what is completed for police and fire, and then present the other needs the tax could support. 3, have a clear, transparent, separate accounting for those funds and the reserves so that it is never questioned where the money is or spent. Report on it monthly or quarterly and be sure it's on the agenda so people know when it was addressed. The community voted in this tax measure that had no oversight, even during a pandemic and an economic crisis. So you can see many believed it would go directly to the urgent needs of police, fire, and emergency services. It is imperative that it does. Thank you all for doing your part and investing your time and skill sets in our community.
Laura, are there any others? Like, sounds like that's it.
That is all I have.
Okay, so we'll go back to attendees on the webinar, and Luke, I see Mr. Oslin would like to speak.
Good evening, Council. Jeff Oslin, business owner, resident of the city of Atascadero. And a few things. I guess I will start now with addressing Ms. Haley Matson on her 1% take and just saying that I signed onto this ballot measure. I attended very much almost every city council meeting. We had a unanimous decision on what we were doing with the 1% funds. And the majority of the 1% funds was to be earmarked for police, fire, infrastructure. Infrastructure could be a backup generator or emergency apparatus, for instance, a generator at the community center. So we have some form of an emergency operations center, updating things that are needed, like a firehouse. And that was promised along with parks and other things. I don't believe roads was part of it, so I will give her that. I also attended one of the sessions, and I thought the sessions were pretty well organized. And I will be very anxious to see how it's compiled and what council chooses for their plan of action going forward. There are still two things that I will continue to push. One is that we spend money now and hire an outside firm to do grant writing, which will parlay our funds much better than not doing that, and making sure that the city looks at a long-term plan, whether it's 10 years out or 15 years out, rather than just 2 to 5 years out, so we know how to spend the funds. That's enough on D20. I have a comment to our city manager. It would be very helpful if you would let the public know what our current tax rate is and what the tax rate will be going to on April 1st, rather than waiting for the state to tell us what it goes to. On another note, the Joy Playground continues to have some issues down there with skateboarders and minor vandalism and graffiti. But I do want to thank our city or our city staff, whoever responded to the last go around and put up preventative measures for skateboarders. We had no idea that somebody was going to address it as fast as it was addressed. And for that, I thank our city and our staff for attending to the Joy Playground so quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Oslin. And I am seeing no other hands raised. Luke, do we have anyone on the phone?
We do not.
All right, so we'll go ahead and close community forum and bring it back to council and staff. I know that in terms of Mr. Paskin's comments, that I know staff is engaged with him on those items. Let's see, Mr. Hanley, we had, yeah, Mr. Oslin's comment about it. And normally we don't have a discussion about the items at community forum, but because this is D20 related, I think it would be good to address maybe Mr. Oslin's comment about potentially, you know, us reaching out and letting businesses know we can't be the formal entity that does that, but maybe there's a way we can at least prepare them in case the state's running behind on things, or maybe we know what that timing looks like. And then also maybe to address a little bit of what Ms. Mattson said.
Yes, so the current tax rate is 7.75. It will be going up to 8.75 on April 1st. We can try and work with the chamber to at least get those businesses. The chamber has access to the information and help push it out. Certainly we will have it on our website, through social media and other places. Surprisingly enough, there are a lot of small businesses that do collect sales tax that we are not necessarily aware of and don't have a lot of contact with. So we will do as much as we can. The State Board of Equalization does have each and every business that will collect sales tax. And so they do those notifications and let them know what they need to do as they do pay those taxes to the state and not to the city. But we will definitely be pushing that out as much as we can. Oak Ridge Estates, the area where there is part of the hill has sloughed on to the road there. We are working with that particular property owner to try and get that addressed. I do want to let Mr. Paskins know that. On the Ms. Mattson, I want to thank her and Jeff both for participating in the D20 sessions, for taking the time to come and let us know what their priorities are and how they would like to see the money spent. As the council knows, this was a general tax. The council purposely did not identify where the monies would be spent because we don't want to make it a specific tax. That being said, a lot of the discussion around the need for the sales tax was centered around police, fire, infrastructure. We did say before we ever placed it on the tax that we would be receiving public input on where those funds should be spent, where the priorities are. Certainly a lot of what we heard, no surprise, in those D20 meetings are regarding police, fire, and infrastructure. That public safety, the infrastructure that we're talking about a lot of the times are those public safety things, such as storm drains. If a storm drain fails, you have flooding and or roads that are washed out, not ability for police and fire to respond. We have some tough choices still ahead of us. And there were other things, other things and good comments that came up as part of that. As for oversight and transparency, I do want to encourage any member of the public. We have budgets. We are going through our financial strategic plan tonight. We have audits. We are audited by an independent audit firm each year. There are state controller reports. There's Transparent California. And there are public records acts. We certainly want to be as transparent as we can, while still balancing the need to make sure that we don't spend too many resources on the administrative time that it takes to produce those records and to keep pushing things out. And so that was part of what the council had looked at when determining what type of oversight to have on this. Oversight committees are expensive, and the council wanted to make sure that we were balancing the need to assure the public where the funds were being spending with the cost of providing that insurance. And what we decided on was that the Citizen Sales Tax Oversight Committee will also be providing oversight on these D20 funds, reporting on where they're going to be spent, what the priorities are, what we hope to achieve. And again, similar to the F14 funds, reporting back, metrics and what is improved in those types of things. So we have that along with a lot of public meetings. Anybody that wants to get involved or wants to see where all city funds are spent, I highly encourage them to take a look at our website, reach out to my office or the finance director's office, and we're happy to help you find what you're looking for. Did I catch everything?
Yeah, you did. And just so the public knows that the transparency has always been there and will always be there. All of the things that Ms. Ricker talked about, all of those documents are online. All of those meetings that we have are public meetings, and we encourage and we invite you to attend. So all along, there is this ability, D20 or no D20, there's always been that ability. And now we've added this extra layer with these public input meetings and adding the Citizen Sales Tax Oversight Committee to have this extra function. As we heard last meeting, Chair Jones had said, we're ready to take that on. So again, like you said, thank you to both of you this evening and the rest of you who have participated. We've really been grateful for your input and feedback and hope that that continues. And now we will move on to our one public hearing, item B1, which is an urgency ordinance affirming orders of the state of California, the County Emergency Services Director and Public Health Officer. And I'm going to start with ex parte communications. Ex parte is us letting you know if we have had any conversations outside of this public meeting that might influence our decision. And so I'm just going to go on my screen here and I'm going to ask Councilmember Darris.
None.
Councilmember Funk.
I've had quite a few conversations over the course of the pandemic with business owners and fitness enthusiasts and public health advocates, but no specific information that influences my vote today.
Thank you. Councilmember Borba.
Just general conversations, nothing that I think would constitute ex parte.
Mayor Pro Tem Newsom.
No ex parte.
And the same general conversations, one in particular today about this, but I will actually be bringing up an issue related to that conversation as we get into this. So with that said, we will turn it over to our city attorney, Mr. Pyrick, who will make the presentation for this item.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So this is as the title suggests, an emergency ordinance by the city, which would affirm orders that have been issued by both the state governor and the State Department of Public Health, as well as the county. The county's emergency services director and the county public health officer. As the council knows, the city contracts with the county for health services, for health officer services. So in 2020, there was a similar ordinance that was presented to the council, which was adopted, that included similar provisions to the ones that's in front of you tonight. And what it does is allows the city to enforce the orders by the state and the county with regard to COVID-19. Now, while it authorizes such enforcement, it does not require that enforcement. And I'm going to, in a couple of minutes, turn to the city manager, who's going to explain what the practice of the city has been. So this ordinance is intended to provide, as I say, the opportunity, if it becomes necessary, for enforcement by the city of the COVID orders. And the 2020 ordinance has expired, so that's why there's a need to adopt the current ordinance, so that gives you that opportunity. I do have an edit to the ordinance. It's on the second page of the ordinance. I don't have the numbers on my pages, but I think it's like perhaps your page 94. 94, there you go, thank you. And you will see there's a whereas clause at the top. It begins, whereas the city of Atascadero will be required to enforce all restrictions imposed by the state and the county. That whereas clause is not necessary for this urgency ordinance. My recommendation, therefore, would be that that be stricken from the ordinance. The key provision, if you will, of the ordinance you will find in section 4, which I believe is on the following page. And I'm not going to read it in its entirety, but I'll just summarize it by saying that what this section does is, I indicated in my introductory comments, is that it authorizes the city to enforce the orders issued by the state and by the county. Again, does not require the enforcement, it just authorizes it. The city can exercise its discretion in whether or not to proceed with enforcement. And as I forecast earlier, I'm going to throw the ball to the city manager at this point, who's going to run with it and score a touchdown. Oh no, that's I'm having Super Bowl hangover. She instead is going to explain what the city's approach has been to the circumstances regarding violations of the state or county orders.
Yes, while the previous ordinance was in effect and assuming adoption of tonight's order, we do not expect a change in our approach to helping the community operate in a safe manner. Currently, as the city receives a complaint, whether it be through the county hotline or directly to our code enforcement officer, our code enforcement officer will go out and meet with the businesses or go to a business and meet with them and try and provide education and work with them on a way to help them operate in a safe manner. We have been doing well in this manner. While certainly this is a tough situation for all of us, everyone is trying to do their best to remain safe to date, and we have had success with this particular method. We don't see the need. We have not issued a citation to date with the adoption of this ordinance. We hope that we do not have to issue a citation in the future, but this would be a tool that we would have if the need arose. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you had on enforcement.
I'm also happy to answer questions. So.
Thank you. And I will say, I had asked the city manager about that specific clause, so I can see she's spoken with our city attorney, and that is actually the conversation I had with a business owner today who had highlighted and brought that very thing up with me as well. So I think there were a few of us looking at that. So I'm glad to see that that is your recommendation. Are there any of my colleagues that have questions for the city attorney or the city manager? Councilmember Borbeau and followed by Councilmember Darris.
Yeah, I think this is a city attorney
Uh-oh.
question. Ryan, as you mentioned in the staff report, you mentioned in 2019, we appointed the San Luis Obispo County Health Officer as our health officer, because obviously we don't have and want to develop our own county or our own public health program. And it says here that in doing so, we consented to the enforcement of laws related to public health by them, which means I take it, and it's mentioned elsewhere, that means, of course, that the public health officer of the county could enforce those measures in our jurisdiction. And we're indicating that this ordinance and this renewal of the ordinance we let expire is necessary for us to enforce it. Does not our acceptance of them and appointment of them as our public health officer enable us to, pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, during pandemic, enforce any public health orders issued by the public health officer? Or can we only enforce them if we pass an ordinance like this?
My recommendation is that we pass an ordinance like this to make it clear that the city could enforce the orders if they chose to do so. As I indicated in my earlier remarks, this provides you that opportunity, but does not require the enforcement. The county as well, can exercise their judgment in choosing, whether to enforce a particular order or not. And that they may, for example, adopt a similar position as described to you by the city manager, which would be to, encourage individuals and businesses to voluntarily comply with the orders rather than to be punitive and initiating enforcement proceedings. But certainly for that there could be circumstances where the county may choose to enforce, and likewise there may be circumstances where the city would choose to enforce if it becomes necessary. But I think from my understanding of the comments from the city manager so far, the city's been pretty successful in getting voluntary cooperation, which is a good thing.
Right. I'm glad somebody caught that, we wanted to excise that wording that said we were required to, take enforcement actions. I just didn't understand why an ordinance like this was necessary at all. I just kind of assumed that when we make the county public health officer our public health officer, that we also would have, if we ever desired it, pandemic related or not, to enforce a public health order.
Well,
it sounds like you're saying without this ordinance, we could not do that.
Let me say this about that. I think that what the ordinance does is make it very clear that you've got the enforcement authority. There are some sections in the Emergency Services Act and various other places in different codes that do suggest that there may be some enforcement powers that the city has, but the purpose of this ordinance is to make sure that there's no doubt that the city could, if it chose to, enforce those rules.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Darris.
Thank you, Mayor Moreno. I think Charles pretty much asked my question because I was concerned about the county's jurisdiction over ours and being able to enforce where we may be a little more lenient on certain issues, and if the county's going to come in and more strictly enforce certain things, I don't think we can have any jurisdiction over what they do. I think that they would be above us. Do I understand that correctly?
Yes, the county could enforce their orders throughout the county if they chose to do so. Whether they would defer to the city or not, hopefully, not hopefully, I could say that based on my experience is that the city and the county have a good working relationship. So I wouldn't expect that to be a problem.
All right, thank you.
Rochelle, I would ask too, is this, or maybe this is a Mr. Parrott question, is this not required to be in place too to continue with being eligible for emergency funding and those types of things, the grant money, CARES Act, any sort of reimbursement?
I can take that one. It is not required for funding purposes. You've got your declaration of an emergency. It was done in 2020, and it is one that is ongoing and has never been rescinded. As we all know, unfortunately, the COVID-19 pandemic has been continuing and still continues till today. So it's unknown when it's ever, going to end, hopefully someday, but it hasn't yet. So this ordinance would allow enforcement. And then at some point, when we get past COVID-19, you can always rescind the ordinance.
Okay. So that is for the funding, and we have that continuing ongoing. This is simply to say, okay, we're going to continue the same types of enforcement measures, and what you're explaining is that we're just clarifying this. We don't necessarily have to do it, but your recommendation is that we do, so that it's crystal clear.
Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Funk.
Yes. One COVID related question and one general one. For the COVID related thing, with this ordinance, this does not is completely is this independent of the jurisdiction of the alcohol and beverage control, which is also done enforcement actions, so that would our restaurants and distilleries and other places that are serving alcoholic beverages and are licensed to do so still be subject to ABC determining if they were in compliance with the state orders?
Yes.
Okay, and I'll ask the city manager, is it our practice when we're doing code enforcement to make sure that our businesses are aware of that item at risk also? Because the ABC license is a lot more valuable than the cost of a city citation, last I checked.
Yes, we do let them know, businesses know of some of the risks, whether it be ABC or another state licensing body, and that just because we aren't citing them doesn't mean that the state won't come in or anything along those lines. We do also talk to them about insurance and workers' comp and some of those other risks that businesses face for that.
Okay, and then it is also fair to note that I think that that we just recently offered businesses financial support, and the requirement was that they be in substantial compliance with these COVID-related regulations. That's correct, right?
That is correct. That was one of the criteria that we looked at in determining eligibility and scoring the businesses.
So there's been a substantial recent incentive for businesses to be in and stay in compliance.
That is
okay,
correct.
With regard to non-COVID things for the city attorney, if the county health officer had a health ordinance that is not in the context of an emergency that for some reason needed enforcement by our locally as opposed to county health people coming and monitoring the restaurant or whatever else that they do, would we are we in a position to do that enforcement, or does that only work in the context of an emergency?
Well, the ordinance that you have before you deals with COVID orders. If there was some other order of the health officer, I think we'd have to look at that on a case-by-case basis to determine to what extent the city may or may not be involved in the enforcement of other health orders.
I was just trying to clarify the first whereas clause on the top of page 94, which pertains to the city's designation. This is the clause that Councilmember Verbeau was asking about, that we have designated the county's health officer as our health officer, and consented to the enforcement of laws and public health officer within the city. And my understanding from your response to Councilmember Verbeau was that, yes, those orders are considered enforceable within Atascadero, either by the county or by us. But we are just doing this ordinance with regard to the emergency to make it crystal clear. Is that a fair characterization of the situation?
Well, if you look at the whereas clause, what it indicates is that the city appointed the health officer as the city health officer, and that the city is consenting to the enforcement of laws relating to the public health by the health officer within the city. So that's in fact what that resolution did, was authorize the county health officer to enforce its whatever orders or laws that may relate to health within the city that are within the jurisdiction of the health officer, that the county would enforce those. So this would be subject to the county's enforcement. As I said, whether or not the city would have some independent authority to enforce county health orders in the city outside of COVID, I'd have to look at that on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing no other questions, we'll go ahead and open this up to public comment. If you were on the webinar or on the phone, go ahead and raise your hand. And I will ask our city clerk if there was any public comment to be read into the record that was received via email.
There was not.
Okay, thank you. And I do see Mr. Oslin.
Once again, Jeff Oslin, business owner, resident, city of Atascadero. I'm not understanding why we need to do this ordinance or urgency ordinance. Makes no sense in my eyes. We are already under state regs and kind of like how we're at. I think this gives too much authority that is unnecessary. And I would hope that council would decide that it is not needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Oslin. Anyone else from the public, any of the attendees that are wishing to speak, go ahead and raise your hand. And I will ask Luke if we have any members of the public on the phone wishing to speak.
We do not.
All right, seeing no one else wishing to speak on this item, I will close public comment and bring it back to council and to staff. So we'll ask Mr. Pyrick if you might address Mr. Oslin's comments.
As I said in my earlier comments, this ordinance does not require the city to take enforcement action. It only authorizes the city to take enforcement action. And hopefully Mr. Osman is right that it won't be necessary. That's the goal. And I think you've already heard from the city manager that the city has a good working relationship with the businesses and has been pretty successful in getting voluntary compliance. And that has been true in the past, and it's hoped that it'll be true in the future. But since we don't know for sure what's going to happen, if next week, next month, there comes a circumstance where it would be necessary for the city to proceed with some type of enforcement action, whether it be citation or otherwise, because of a problem that's not getting resolved voluntarily. What this ordinance does is give you another tool in your toolbox to be able to take action. And it's not required that you do, but on a case-by-case basis, there might be a need, and that's the purpose of the ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Pyrick. With that, I will look to council if there's any discussion or a motion. And I would ask, please, if the motion would include removing that whereas clause. Councilmember Darras.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate what Mr. Pierce was saying to Mr. Osland is that, I completely understand the necessity for this ordinance is that it gives us the authority to enforce something. Should we have to, if we did not have this authority within this ordinance and we tried to, and we needed, and there was a necessity to enforce a citation or whatnot, I can see it being easily challenged because, where's the authority to do so, even though the governor may have handed it down. So I'm in favor of this, and I think it's definitely necessary to have it. So anyway, that's just my 2 cents.
Is that a motion from you maybe?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we, I got to read it. So a motion that the council adopt the urgency ordinance affirming the orders of the state of California and the county emergency services director and the public health officer and the city director of the emergency services.
And would you also, and so we have a motion by Councilmember Daras, a second by Councilmember Funk. And might I ask the maker of the motion in the second if you're willing to remove that whereas clause as indicated by the city attorney?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Thank you. I'll remove the clause as stated by Mr. Perry.
Okay, thank you. So we've got, so the first and the maker and the second are both in favor of that. So we've got a motion by Councilmember Daras, a second by Councilmember Funk, and now our Deputy City Manager, City Clerk Christensen will now read the title of the ordinance.
Urgency ordinance of the City Council of the City of Atascadero, California, affirming orders of the State of California and the Emergency Services Director and Public Health Officer of the County of San Luis Obispo and the City Director of Emergency Services related to the COVID-19 state and local emergency and expressly affirming such actions and orders as applicable and enforceable within the city jurisdiction. Councilmember Daras?
Yes.
Councilmember Funk?
Yes.
Councilmember Cabo?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Richam?
Yes.
Mayor Moreno?
Yes, ma'am.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We'll now move on to our management reports. We have one this evening, and that is our comprehensive, and I mean that in every sense of the word, financial strategy. And this will be our Administrative Services Director, Ms. Jerry Rangel.
Thank you very much. Let me get my screen to show for you. All right, are you seeing my screen?
No.
No. How about now?
Yep, there it is.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much and good evening. I'm very pleased to present to you tonight the Comprehensive Financial Strategy Update for 2021. The city has a very complete comprehensive plan. It has 6 sections: key actions, revenues, expenses, long-term costs, reserves, and policies. This is really a big picture perspective that can be used as just one more planning tool. The financial plan is a useful tool for making decisions and considerations and should be flexible as conditions change and new information becomes available. This is a snapshot in time that reflects the current conditions, and the assumptions and estimates are based on information available. Things can and will change, but this provides us useful information to guide the way. Given that we are still in the process of collecting information from the community and thinking about priorities for the sales tax measure D20 funds, those funds have not been included in this document, nor are the F14 funds included. This document covers a wide range of topics in good depth, and in the interest of time, I will touch only briefly on each. However, this document is on the city's website and it's available to individuals interested in learning more. Tonight, staff is requesting council consider adoption of the resolution approving the policies in section 6 of this document. This graph represents the cornerstone of council's financial strategy. City general fund revenues are similar to the curved line here. Revenues shoot up in economic boom times and drop down in economic slumps. Council has historically maintained the goal of consistent service levels through economic ups and downs and put away money in good times for use later. The X on this graph shows about where we think we are now. We believe the economy and the city revenues are continuing to recover and slowly grow. The 7-year projection included in this document anticipates the use of general fund reserves for a few more years to keep service levels steady. The existing city budget process is purposely structured to continuously receive public input on where funds are spent. The process this year is expanded even more, as City Manager Rickard referred to earlier. The budget and D20 priorities public outreach kickoff meeting has been completed, as have the 9 study sessions. Data from those sessions will be presented to the council at the strategic planning session on February 19th and 20th. After that, staff will draft an action plan, refine revenue projections, work on operating costs, and consider supplemental budget requests. There'll be more public meetings in March and April, and throughout April and May, Finance Committee meetings, and ultimately consideration of the budget by council at the June 8th council meeting. Section 1, key actions. Council has taken a lot of proactive steps, and these actions have improved the city's financial outlook. Details of the long list of things accomplished and being worked on is included in the document. Council has focused city resources on its goals of leveraging placemaking in commercial areas for long-term economic development, ensuring comprehensive safety readiness and risk mitigation, and fostering financial stability. Significant revenue, section 2. Property tax revenue is the city's largest single source of revenue. It is usually around 45% of general fund revenues. Property tax revenue has several different components that can fluctuate independently. Current year secured property tax. This is what most people think of when discussing property tax. It is the most stable of the components and makes up around 60 to 65% of property tax revenues in total. This is the 1% tax of the assessed value of real property like homes and businesses. And just as a side note, the city receives about 17% of that 1%. So for example, a home with an assessed value of $500,000 would pay 1% property tax or $5,000 to the county tax collector. And of that amount, the city would receive about $850 in property tax revenue as its share. Property tax in lieu of vehicle license fees. This revenue source grew out of a state and local budget agreement as part of the state's 2004 budget package. Under this arrangement, the vehicle license fee was reduced to Californians, and the reduction in city and county revenue was replaced with a like amount of property tax. Current year supplemental. This is an extra assessment that occurs when new construction is completed on real property or when property changes ownership. We're seeing growth in this component in Atascadero relative not only to the new construction, but also on properties that choose to renovate or build additions. There is a time lag of 6 months to a year or more between the event causing the increase in valuation and the tax collection. And unsecured. This is collection on items such as mobile homes, machinery, airplanes, watercraft, and the like. We generally expect to see steady growth trend in property tax revenues. The County of San Luis Obispo projects increases in assessed valuation countywide of about 4% next year. The State Legislative Analyst's Office, Beacon Economics, and the UCLA Anderson Forecast all expect the housing market to continue to grow, and construction activity in Atascadero is strong, now with our already 730 housing units currently in some phase of development. This means increases to the city's assessed valuation and higher revenues. Sales tax revenues are another important component of the general fund revenues. They generally make up between 15 and 20% of total general fund revenues. Sales tax is the most volatile of all the major revenues. Fuel and service station are the largest sector of Atascadero sales tax, making up about 17% of the sales tax revenue. Sales tax from fuel prices has historically been very volatile. COVID-19 struck the fuel and service station industry hard as people stayed home and did not travel. New revenue from AB 147, based on the Wayfair decision, led to additional sales tax collections on certain internet sales, increasing state and local county pool revenue. This pool revenue helped to offset some of those COVID-related reductions over the past year and is encouraging revenue for the future. Sales tax revenues are expected to gradually improve over the next 7 years. This assumes a more complete recovery from COVID effects at 5.4% growth next fiscal year, 4% in the following year, and 2.5% in the future years. This is consistent with the projections of the city sales tax consultants, HDL companies, and also with Beacon Economics. And we will continue to refine these as the 2-year budget is developed. Transient occupancy tax, or TOT, is collected from guests staying at hotels within the city. Prior to COVID-19, the city was seeing significant increases in TOT revenue with the council's emphasis on promotions and economic growth and the Atascadero Tourism Business Improvement District. TOT revenue was severely affected by the travel restrictions and stay-at-home orders related to COVID-19. We expect some better recovery in the current and next fiscal year and potential for additional rooms to come on board in fiscal year 22-23, and then mild increases after that. Atascadero has seen significant building activity over recent years, and this looks to continue into the future. There are a large number of residential and commercial development projects in the works. In calendar year 2020, the Community Development Department received 1,379 building permit applications and issued 1,166 permits. And as I referenced earlier, staff is currently working with applicants on over 730 housing units currently in some stage of development process. Section 3 is related to operating costs. These are the bulk of the general fund expenditures and include 4 general categories: employee services, operations, special programs and projects, and capital projects. Employee services are the backbone of the community. The city is a service organization, so the largest part of the general fund expenditures is dedicated to employee services. Employee services make up about 72% of general fund expenses. Several of the cost components that make that up are salaries and wages, healthcare costs, and retirement, including CalPERS expenses. There are 6 bargaining units, and we're currently budgeted for 129 full-time employees. Labor is one of those issues that will be of particular interest in the upcoming budget cycle as the economy gains strength. There is no group of people that work harder and can do more with less than the staff here in Atascadero. However, the city's revenues aren't as strong as most of our SLO County neighbors. This makes it difficult as we discuss desires for increased staffing levels or try to move toward the county average on salary schedules. Staffing levels are important for both maintaining the service levels to the community, but also to keep employees safe while they are performing their duties. This chart shows the staffing levels for police officers per capita as of June 30th, 2019 in Atascadero compared to other local cities. This is the same chart except for firefighters per 1,000 residents as of June 30th, 2019. Employee retention is also a concern for the city. Atascadero's fiscal constraints limit the salaries to employees. There is significant competition from other agencies who are able to offer more generous salaries than Atascadero is able to. The market for labor is tight and employers are competing. Here are the current comparisons to other jurisdictions for a top step police officer positions. This chart only demonstrates the police department, but it's an issue for all city departments across the board. The 7-year projection in the financial strategy assumes no cost of living salary increases in the employee services costs. Overall, employee service costs are expected to rise, mainly reflecting increases in health insurance and CalPERS retirement costs. CalPERS determines the city's rate, which has 2 different components. The first is a normal rate, or the cost of pension benefits for 1 year. This is a percentage that is multiplied by the applicable payroll for the year and then paid at the time payroll is paid. The second component is a flat dollar amount known as the unfunded accrued liability, or UAL. The UAL is also determined by CalPERS actuaries, and the city pays it as a flat dollar amount at the beginning of the fiscal year. A while back, the CalPERS board voted to phase in a decrease to the discount rate. The discount rate is essentially the interest rate of return. This has a significant impact on the city and, of course, all of the other agencies throughout the state. This change was phased in over a 3-year period. CalPERS estimates an increase in both components, but the larger change is the impact to the UAL. CalPERS estimates that the city's combined UAL for miscellaneous and safety programs will go from 1.97 million in 1920 to 2.9 million in fiscal year 24-25. Operating costs are expenditures related to the regular ongoing operations of the department, including supplies, tools, utilities, insurance, contract services, and other similar expenditures. Overall, we expect a growth trend toward increasing costs, and the 7-year projection reflects only modest increases of 1 to 2% each year. A few additional issues that we will need to consider as we move into the budget cycle are underfunded operations, regulatory compliance, issues related to transients and the community experiencing homelessness, COVID-19 response costs, and voter approved propositions. Special programs and projects and capital projects. These are atypical costs or those that are really not part of ongoing operational costs. They vary based on the needs and the availability of resources. Amounts are included in the 7-year projection as estimates of potential needs, but kind of as placeholders for things that we know will come up and will need to be funded. Section 4 is long-term costs. Long-term costs are those things that are being used on a regular basis, but the costs are large and infrequent and therefore don't appear as obvious as some ongoing operational costs. These include a number of different categories, such as streets, bridges, storm drains, building and park replacement, technology replacement, vehicle replacement, equipment replacement, and employee leave accruals. Included in this document, in the financial strategy document, are discussions of each category and estimates of annual costs to replace the infrastructure. These are our best estimates from the information we have at the time, but they will be revised as new information comes forward. When we talk about street maintenance, we usually focus primarily on the pavement management, but there are other components, as you see listed here, that are part of the transportation system that work in concert to support the safety of motorists, pedestrians, bicyclists, and emergency response vehicles. The city is responsible for maintaining a transportation system that involves 145 centerline miles of roadway. the city has developed a 5-year capital improvement program, or CIP, for the road projects using both Measure F14 funding and existing funding resources. The current 5-year CIP includes over 41 centerline miles of roadway improvements involving rehabilitation or resurfacing with an estimated budget of over $23 million. The city has improved the overall weighted pavement condition index, or PCI, from 47 in 2014 to 50 in 2019. That is great progress and demonstrates the effectiveness of critical point management methodology and the city's commitment to maximizing funding through efficiency and sound engineering. Historically, storm drain system was a source of mystery and concern. To get a better understanding of the system, the city commissioned a storm drain inventory in 2012. We now have much more knowledge of what we have and what's happening. The inventory found that overall storm drains are holding up better than might be expected. 86% are actually in fair or better condition. 5% will need to be replaced within the next 5 years. Historically, replacement reserve has not been funded, but the city actively looks for grants, funding, and other opportunities to maintain the system well, and whenever possible, includes the replacement of old pipes during the roadway rehabilitation projects. Staff hopes to perform an updated evaluation of the storm drains and culvert conditions and costs in the near future. The city of Atascadero owns a number of different buildings, including City Hall, police and fire stations, the Pavilion on the Lake, the Colony Park Community Center, and the city corporate yard. Included in this category are also other assets such as park restrooms, playgrounds, sports areas, building improvements, zoo exhibits, just to name a few. Fire station number 1 is 70 years old and is really showing its signs of age. It has a long list of needed repairs, including safety items, and structural stability and earthquake retrofit of the roof structure and hose tower. Station 2, the facilities at the zoos, parks, and pavilion all need to be addressed as well. Understanding the value of these items, the council was able to transfer $1 million in fiscal year 16-17 from the general fund to the building maintenance fund to offset some of these unfunded portions. This was due to some one-time occurrences in the general fund that year that made that possible. Consideration of ongoing funding for the items in the building replacement category will be important to consider as we approach the new budget cycle. The city has a significant investment in and dependence on technology equipment. The computers and associated software make up a technology system that is crucial to the day-to-day operations of the city and represent an estimated value of about $2.4 million. The technology replacement reserve is mostly fully funded. We expect to meet all of the replacement needs for identified equipment and software. However, the city still does continue to look for more cost-efficient ways to implement technology and the needs of the city. Vehicles with an expected useful life of under 20 years are funded, and we're meeting immediate short-term needs. The city has extended vehicle lives in some cases in order to save funds, and this has been quite effective. Since the Great Recession, however, the city has not been funding those vehicles with 20 or greater lives. These include things like fire engines, the ladder truck, and heavy equipment that's used by Public Works. Recognizing the importance of funding these longer-term vehicles, again, council was able to transfer $500,000 in fiscal year 18-19 from the general fund to the vehicle replacement fund to offset some of these unfunded portions. This again was unexpectedly became available that year and was a one-time occurrence that made that possible. Atascadero has significant amount of equipment, which is essential to the operation of the city. These tools are necessary and allow employees to effectively perform their duties. The ideal strategy would be to work toward a program where replacement is funded annually, allowing the city to stay current with its equipment. Due to financial constraints, equipment replacement has historically been funded on an as-needed basis through the general fund. While staff does their best to keep existing equipment running for the maximum amount of time, eventually equipment ceases to be effective. City staff will continue to maximize equipment life to the extent possible, take advantage of savings opportunities as they arise, and continue to pursue grant funding as alternate funding sources. However, equipment replacement for many items has not been achievable, and there are items that will have to be replaced within the next budget cycle. There are different types of paid leave that accrue to full-time employees. These include vacation, holiday, administrative leave, sick leave, and compensatory time accruals. These are governed by memorandums of understandings, personnel contracts, and the personnel system rules. While the city's leave accruals are real liabilities, they have different characteristics than other long-term liabilities. As an employee terminates employment, the city pays out that person's leave liability. The city then has the option as to how quickly to hire a replacement employee for that position and can opt to hold off until sufficient salary savings has been achieved to cover the outgoing employee's payoff. Of course, this can also lead to operational issues as the work does not go away. While oftentimes a department is able to move around shifts or workload to minimize overtime while the replacement is recruited, there is some level of service reduction during that period. This is not a liability that we would expect to have to pay out all at once, but instead it's a liability that grows and contracts by relatively small amounts each year. It's projected that because of the recent issues related to COVID-19 and the departure of several long-term employees, that this liability will be contracting for the next few years. There are some public assets that are not the responsibility of the city to maintain. For example, street trees and sidewalks are the responsibility of the adjacent property owners to maintain, and there are over 30 miles of public streets that are maintained by the property owners that live on those streets. And some property owners pay into the Community Facilities District when others do not. All of these unfunded infrastructure items exist due to the city's financial constraints. As we move forward into the new budget cycle, these items may be worth consideration for city funding. Long-term costs may look daunting, but they're not unlike other agencies. The city is ahead of the game by looking at these costs and forming a plan, and we've made great strides on long-term costs. We will continue to look for solutions to the city's needs, and Measure D20 funds may be considered to help address some of these issues. Section 5 is reserves. The city has about 40 different funds, most with reserve balances or collective amounts of revenues that exceed expenses. Most of these are restricted in some manner. Generally, we focus on general fund reserves because the general fund is the one that the council has the most discretion over. We see this graph again as the key to continue to build reserves in periods of financial growth and to judiciously use those reserves in periods of economic downturn. Council's policy on reserves sets a general floor of the level of reserves as a percentage of general fund expenditures at 20%. However, this percentage should continue to be monitored and evaluated with a set of criteria items, both independently and in conjunction with each other, to determine the prudent level of general fund reserves as we move into the budget cycle. There are a number of these different criteria to evaluate when trying to determine what the appropriate level of reserves is. In the interest of time, I won't go through all 11, but I will just review a few, 3 of these actually tonight. The largest driver to determine the appropriate level of reserves is the state of the economy. Pre-COVID, the economy was very strong. However, since COVID came into being, we had this pandemic-induced recession. We are now seeing some recovery, but that recovery is uneven between industries, unemployment, all of that. Overall, we are seeing strength in property values. Sales tax pool revenue is up, which is good, and TOT is starting to look a little better. Things that we need to consider as we look toward the future is the COVID and the vaccine data, how that influences the state of the economy, new political leaders and administration, international travel, trade policies, the high cost of housing, and the closure of Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant. Another important measurement of reserves is the level of diversity in general fund revenue. Cities with fewer sources of general fund revenue will require a greater amount of reserves in order to successfully weather a downturn in one revenue area. This is true for Atascadero as we heavily rely on property tax and sales tax revenues. Measure 3 is the stability of the revenue base, or how susceptible to fluctuations are the key revenue sources. Property tax revenue is considered to be one of the more stable sources of revenue. Here's a graph showing the property tax per capita on a constant dollar basis. This smooths out changes for normal inflation so we can see the underlying trend. And here is a similar graph, but for sales tax per capita, constant dollar. As of June 30th, 2020, the general fund had 12 million in reserves, excluding Measure F14 funds. This represents 53.8% of general fund expenditures. The 7-year projection estimates that expenses will exceed revenues through fiscal year 24-25, and general fund reserves will not drop below the council's 20% minimum. Again, this is excluding measures F14 and D20 funds. Fiscal planning by its very nature requires significant assumptions of what the future may hold. They are best guesses for now based on the information that's currently available. Section 6 is policies and practices. For council's consideration tonight, we have a draft resolution adopting the policies as stated. The budget document allocates city resources to achieve general goals of the community. It's prudent, therefore, to have in place fiscal policies and practices to guide the decision-making process. When resources are tight and needs are plenty, it's difficult to commit to saving some of those precious resources for the future. The fiscal strategy and the policies will help add an additional layer of stability as we approach the difficult task of setting the budget for the next 2-year period. The policies and practices that are in section 6 would continue to stay the course, look for operational efficiencies, evaluate expenditures, be aggressive with economic development, fund long-term replacement reserves, be realistic in setting operational budgets, consider the long-term and the short-term when making decisions, check into new or expended programs should be implemented only with the funding source or elimination of other costs. Ensure adequate funding is in place to provide essential services to new residents without diluting the services for existing residents. Continue to analyze and monitor economic conditions and understand that revenue growth is slow but steady. Continued conservative fiscal policy will be tough but essential, and the city continues to enjoy solid fiscal health due to careful planning. In conclusion, the comprehensive financial strategy is a really big picture overview and can be used for planning. The city's strategy is reviewed often and remains flexible. Overall growth continues to be slow and steady, and continued conservative fiscal policy will be essential for our future. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Director. A very thorough report, very comprehensive, if I might say. And what I want to let the public know, so the last meeting, we went through the audited financial statements. And that's a pretty hefty document, not just in size, but in the content. Governmental accounting is a completely different animal than just business, regular accounting, not to mention all the notes to the financial statements. And a lot of it can seem very dry and somewhat overwhelming. Nonetheless, that is on the website at atascadero.org, and you are welcome to look at audited financial statements as, of course, our budget too. Now, our financial strategy, on the other hand, which will also be on the website after tonight, is much easier to read. So it is a very friendly document, I might say, that really anyone can pick it up and really get a really good grasp of what's going on in the city. I will tell you it's 100 pages plus about 40 pages of appendixes or appendices. But there are several graphs, and it is not dry reading. I would say it's actually kind of interesting. So I do want you to know that that is available, and you at your leisure, of course, can read through that. If you ever have questions, reach out to us, to staff, to any of us, because we will help get those answers for you. But pretty self-explanatory, and Jerry and her team do a fantastic job of putting this together. So that is available to all of you. Now, that said, we are going to go to questions. My expectation is that we'll be able to move through this fairly quickly, so I'm not going to have us take a break because we can kind of just push through. Unless I'm wrong on that, let me know, and then I would have us take a break. Councilmember Funk?
I have a few questions,
Okay.
but I don't think they're going to take all that long to resolve. And then I have a couple of items when we get to making actions. I have a couple of things I would propose as additions to the financial policies.
Okay, why don't you go ahead with your questions?
Okay, so first is Jerry, if you could put back up the property tax revenue growth projections. My recollection looking at that through is that was a very smooth. It's on page 18 of our document, but the graphic was nice. That's a smooth, steady rise over time. And I noted that means that we're assuming, that there's no, you can't tell in this graphic when Diablo Canyon is closing. So the assumption is that we're not going to see, is the assumption that we won't see any significant impact of Diablo Canyon in our property taxes, property tax revenues.
At this point, that component is not specifically called out in this this document, just because the information around that is not quite as clear at this point as to what those indications might be.
Okay, so we might, is when we review this the next time, make some adjustments in that as the picture comes clear.
Yes, certainly we will try to find out as much as possible and implement all of that information into the budget projections for the revenues.
I mean, it seems reasonable that we would continue a strong housing market. On page 85 in our document, and that where you're looking at what some of the sources of revenues, there's a note that we've fuel and service stations account for a very significant percentage of our sales tax revenues. To what extent have we started planning anything in for the impact of switching over from fossil fuels to electric vehicles that significantly reduces users' cost of operating those vehicles, but also then does reduce our tax collections from selling gas?
For these projections here, we've been working with HDL and their projections for the next, smaller series of years on that. There are some increases that are built into the state's program on revenues and things like that come through for gas tax and that. So we will continue to work with HDL in some of those projections and get those a little bit closer as we look forward to the budget process. I don't expect probably a huge change in the next 2-year cycle, but certainly beyond that, that's something that we're going to want to add into our consideration.
Yeah, that seems like a bigger issue in the 7-year planning timeframe than the 2-year timeframe. Looking at, as we continue to look at this, with property tax revenues, we are expecting to see continued steady growth. Do we have any way that we stay in touch, either formally or informally, with the extent to which our housing stock is, that growth is being generated by owner-occupied housing versus speculator investments?
That's not something I specifically, kind of really included or considered for this. That's probably information we could potentially find out. I would have to look into that item.
Yeah, it's probably something that there's not great data on, but that that perhaps our local real estate community can help the city find ways to continue to sort of keep a feel on that, because it is something that our property tax revenues for the city would become more volatile to the extent to which we have a lot of speculators in the market.
I do believe that should be information that's included in the census. So when that information comes out, we will have that at least. And certainly we're working toward, the jobs, housing balance and all that. And as we get more of that, and that should help that as well.
Okay, great. And I just want to, if the mayor will indulge me in a comment, I want to thank you for this really wonderful report. This is by far the most user-friendly of the various city financial documents. The budget, that's tough to dive through. But this one is something that anybody without a financial degree can make their way through the narrative and have a real understanding of how our city comes together. It's extremely helpful for the big picture. So I will. That's the end of my questions. I do have, and when we come back to discussion, would like the opportunity to propose a couple of amendments.
You got it.
Okay.
All right. Do we have any other council questions? Councilmember Darris.
Thank you. Yeah, Jerry, I do want to echo that this is an excellent report. A lot of good detail in there. But the question I have, just a little bit of clarification on the general fund balance in dollars, the graph that you had up on the screen. If you could throw that one back up there. I noticed what you had on the screen was a little bit different than what's in the book. I think it just went to 2027, where in the book it seems to stop at 25. But just clarification, I know we're obviously struggling because of COVID. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Obviously struggling because of COVID, and naturally our income is going to drop as a result of what's happening. But I just want to clarify that this prediction that we're showing here for the next 5 years, or 7 years actually, or 6 years, whatever, is a result of COVID and not some other factors that maybe you're predicting that, I wouldn't necessarily think of. Is this mainly because of COVID, the dip, and then hopefully the eventual rise?
It's a little bit. It's a little bit COVID. I mean, we are having a dip in sales tax, and the fuels and some of the other needs-based things, but which was offset somewhat by the pooled sales tax revenue. So that was very helpful. Property tax has been maintaining stable, and with all the development, it just adds to the assessed value. So some of this is just the situation where we find ourselves in, using that key graph where we don't quite make enough revenue, and we've been on a 7-year plan. Each budget cycle, we reevaluate that 7-year plan. We commit to the 2-year budget plan based on what we look at 7 years out. So historically, since we had the Great Recession, we've been trying to kind of climb back out and get our revenues to exceed our expenditures. But with one thing and another, it seems like we haven't been able to quite make those meet. So over a series of several budget cycles now, we've been forecasting several years of deficits, and then we go positive again. And that's what you're seeing here. We're just trying to still grow out of that. But each year or each budget cycle, when we make that commitment, we make sure that we turn around by the end of that 7-year period. We don't want to deficit spend into infinity. But this is the purpose of those reserve funds, to kind of supplement, make sure that our service levels are stable as we kind of grow ourselves out of that hole, and then we start growing again. And then, yes, I did want to mention the document, I did leave a couple of years off of that graph, but here are the rest of
Yeah,
those.
no, thank you. Because I noticed there's a trend here, and it looks like, we peaked, about 12 million, and we're going to lose, 25% roughly. And that seemed to happen before, around 2004, 2005. And I'm just wondering if, I just wanted to make sure that COVID wasn't specifically the reason, but it seems like it's just a normal cycle. And I just wanted to get your clarification on that. So
yeah, it's just a gradual growth, and we do tend to be a little bit more conservative with our budgeting. So we budget a full staff. As you know, we've been having problems with retention and things like that. So sometimes we have salary savings in there. Sometimes our revenues come in a little bit higher than we budget, just because we're fairly conservative. So our 2020 fund balance is higher than we anticipated. And so that's part of that graph shape as well.
okay, all right, thank you very much. Thank you.
Councilmember Borbo.
What, did I raise my hand?
Well, you have a tell. Let's just put it
There
that
you
way.
go. Well, thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Jerry, for, I think you probably answered some of the questions I proffered to the city manager this morning. So we're asked this evening to, adopt the fiscal strategy in part 6. So I'm looking at page 101, and I had 2 questions. One is on the construction of new facilities in the middle of that page. It says plan for new facilities only if construction and maintenance costs will not negatively impact the operating budget. And I'm wondering, that seems a little extreme in the sense that, if we build a new pickleball court, that inevitably is going to have some maintenance costs. We just built the zoo, whatever we call the new facility we built next to the zoo, the education center. That kind of thing inevitably has some cost that you could say negatively impacts, even though it might not be a lot of money. So I'm concerned about how absolute that is and how absolute that statement is intended to be. So I don't know if you have a comment on that. And the other thing is on the bottom under fiscal management, the second to the last one says, generate additional revenue by marketing city services to other agencies on a contract basis. We don't have any problem with, if there's something we're doing efficiently and we can help out others, just as we utilize the county to do certain things. We've looked into sharing certain costs with certain other cities, et cetera. But I'm concerned about the phrase marketing city services to other agencies. Are there any examples where we actually are providing services to other agencies?
Right now, I don't think there are any. For a while, our fire marshal was providing some services to neighboring communities. I think there was a potential, like you say, for some of that sharing, potentially sharing a fire chief, services with other communities. there have been potentials that have, or situations that have come up in the past that are mutually beneficial to each agency. And I think that we were just looking to take advantage of those things that are beneficial to our agency in that process. So I think that's essentially where that came out of, but I don't think right now we have anything that we're doing in that regard.
All right, thank you. I was also just kind of concerned about the word marketing in terms of that, I guess, concerned me a little bit about that we would actively market that versus look for opportunities to be efficient. But all right, thank you very much.
So you don't want Terry Banish to go on like a full marketing of our services to other.
Yeah, I always have a problem with governments marketing themselves.
Teasing you. I think our marketing means make available.
Yes, that's perhaps want that clarification. Perhaps it's not a big deal.
Any other questions from my colleagues? Seeing none, I only have one small question of clarification, Director. On page 72, the leave accruals, I noticed that when you put the slide up, and then here it is in the report, it says total amount funded, but it's not actually funded, correct? It's a liability that sits out there, but we don't have a reserve set aside for it.
Yes, you're correct. That's probably that is probably not the correct word to use in that.
Okay. Yeah, that might be a good change to make there.
Right.
I hadn't noticed that before. So, okay, wonderful. All right, we will go ahead and open up now to public comment. Any members of the public that are wishing to speak on this item. And I will look to the attendees, and I have raised hands, and I see one from Mr. Oslin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, Jerry, that was a fantastic report. I really appreciate it. And it does go to what I've been preaching for several years, that the city of Atascadero is definitely fiscally responsible. One of the best cities managed with the low amount of funds that we have. And with that being said, if you could put up the police chart as I ramble on, that would be great for me, please. Like to have a couple clarifications from the mayor at some point on this. What's the sunset tax, sunset clause on the tax for the road tax? And I'm not sure if that was included or not included in our budget. Secondly, going back to that graphic on the police, is that including benefits or is that just straight salary or in addition? And then do we ever have some form of a deferred maintenance fund to Mr. Bobo's point of when we build things, having funds to fix things? And as far as economic development goes, I think our city has made great strides in the last few years in being much more business friendly, but we need to continue and we need to get better. We're still not great, but we're way better and much improved. With that being said, I'm sure we're in great hands with our council. We do have Charles, who's brilliant when it comes to finances, and 2 CPAs, including our mayor and Heather as well. So I know we're in great hands with the decisions being made, and I appreciate that presentation. Again, Jerry, that was a fabulous report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Oslin. Anyone else wishing to speak, please raise your hand. Luke, do we have anyone on the phone?
We do not.
And I will ask our city clerk, Ms. Christensen, if we have any members of the public who wrote in wishing to comment on this item.
We do not.
All right, seeing no further. Oh, actually, we have Ms. Haley Matson would like to speak.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, Mayor Moreno and the City Council. I just wanted to jump on because obviously I had a letter earlier. And I just wanted to thank Jerry for putting this together. It's very thorough. I can only imagine, all the information that you have to compile together. I am looking forward to actually going through it in a little bit more detail, obviously as an overview. It's just nice to see, but definitely thorough and definitely very detail oriented. So I appreciate that and appreciate all your guys' hard work and efforts.
Thank you, Ms. Matson. Anyone else wishing to speak? Seeing no hands, I will go ahead and close public comment and bring that back to council. So with regards to Mr. Oslin's comments, the road tax, the F14 was a 12-year sunset is my recollection. Jerry, if you would nod your head for me, am I correct on that? Yeah. So it's a 12-year sunset. So we will at some point in the future need to decide on putting, do we put that back out? And if so, the residents will need to decide if they like what we're doing with the roads. The deferred maintenance, you asked about a deferred maintenance fund. And if you look in the financial strategy, you'll see that there are certain things like technology, vehicles, and a little bit for building. We've been setting aside reserves. As Director Rangel mentioned, we've been setting aside 100% for technology. A good portion of vehicles, except for the longer term ones, the fire trucks and ladder truck, things like that, or fire engines, I should say. But the vehicles themselves, we've done a pretty good job with. Buildings, not as much. And then there's a lot of others that if you look through this report, you'll see that certainly we look for grant funding and things like that. But that's one of the things we'll be looking at with our financial policy in the upcoming budget cycle and what we talk about as strategic planning. Do we want to be putting more into reserves for those types of things for that deferred maintenance? And that's something certainly Councilmember Borbo and I have been strong at for several years. Let's see. And then Jerry, there was a graphic that Mr. Oslin mentioned with regards to police and wondering if that included benefits or if that was just salary. Do you know which graphic that was?
If he's speaking about the comparison of the salaries for the police officers, those were salaries.
Those were straight salaries, not benefits. Okay. And so ask Mr. Oslin if there was a different question you had, go ahead and email us and we'll make sure we answer that. But I think that was it. And yes, I agree. We are much more business friendly than we ever used to be. And we know there's always room for improvement and want to do that and be on top of that. So thank you for your comments tonight. And now we will bring it back to council for discussion and a motion. And I will ask Councilmember Funk, you indicated you had some things you'd like to propose.
Yes, I had two things that I think will be hopefully constructive additions to the set of policies. First, under the operational efficiency section, I propose that we add the following bullet at the end of that section. Seek and consider opportunities to reduce future operating and maintenance costs, including energy costs and vehicle maintenance, even when some additional upfront investment may be required. Specifically, there are a lot of saving as, for example, electric vehicles become more suitable for a variety of functions. I'd like us to have a policy of looking to make sure we consider that option, given that they have so much lower operating costs and life cycle costs due to lower maintenance and lower energy costs. And then secondly, under education and communication, I would propose provide user-friendly summary reports on expenses supported by local tax measures. That would address the concerns of members of the community like Ms. Matson, that it's really important that we be clear to our taxpayers, as we are doing already with Measure F14, and as we've committed to do with Measure D20, that we make those things friendly for people so they can understand what they're getting for their money.
All right. Any questions of clarification on that or any other items for consideration? Councilmember Daris.
Actually, could you repeat what you were saying about the operational and electric vehicles and whatnot? I just want some clarification on what you said there.
Sure. In terms of the amendment language?
Yeah.
Or the rationale?
Well, either way, pretty much all of it, I guess. I just wanted some clarification on what you were saying.
Sure. There, I want us to consider, sometimes we have to spend a little more upfront to get some savings down the road. And I want it to be our policy to look for those opportunities. Is where, where they make sense. I mean, it will take you 30 seconds to Google electric fire truck and discover that the only ones available are toys. But it will. But as time goes on, there may be opportunities and say a little money up front in solar panels on a piece of new construction that would enable us to save significant taxpayer money down the road in the energy cost for operating that facility. Those kinds of things. We have not really been in a position to look for that because we've been so stretched thinly. And I think in terms of investing our taxpayer money efficiently, that's something that we ought to make a practice of looking for.
Okay. I would agree with that in principle that, looking for, spending a little bit more upfront if it's going to save you in the long run. I do agree with that. The electric vehicle portion of it being maybe less maintenance as a regular vehicle. I don't know that that's necessarily true. So I wouldn't specifically point it to that, but certainly more expense up front for a longer term savings, if that can be worded in such that, then I'm in favor of that. So, okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I think you kept it general. You didn't say this was electric vehicle. You said anytime we can look at making investments up front that save us in the long run. And I think most of us can get behind that. Councilmember Borbo. Yes, I see you.
Yes, I think though that what Councilmember Funk is describing though is actually an example of what the bullet already kind of anticipates. In other words, implement and practice ongoing operational efficiencies. The idea that, the time has come that it would be worthwhile to look into electric vehicles because, they might cost a little more upfront, but they take less energy cost and they take less maintenance costs is a perfect example of trying to carry out that bullet as is, the idea of potentially having solar panels on a roof. That's why you look at it. So I don't know that it's, in my mind, there's no harm in the way you worded it because it's not real specific, but I think that kind of idea is already covered in this first bullet in the existing strategy, which is, those are the kind of things we should look at to carry out that first bullet. So I don't feel strongly about it, but I would kind of argue that it's already covered.
Let's do this. He doesn't feel strongly about it. We're making a general statement. I can get behind it. Mark seems to get behind it. So I think we can have a thumbs up and go with Councilmember Funk's addition there. Yeah, all right, we're gonna do that. With regards to your second one, I would make sure that our language is around what we talked about for D20 and the types of reporting that we said we would do. So if we want to grab that, and I don't know that we have to be specific with it in this moment, but if we give that direction, because I want to make sure that what you're doing isn't something in addition to, and that we're now creating a whole new system of reporting. So if that would be acceptable to you.
Sure. I was looking for language that would specifically call out what we have committed to do on D20 and F14 to formalize those into our policies. So I am comfortable with allowing staff to come up with language that would be very consistent with that.
Wonderful. I would, and this is a tiny thing, this isn't the policy, but just because I want to make sure everything in here is correct. On page 44, Jerry, I did talk with Rochelle about this. The third paragraph where it starts out the impact to the police department. Last part of that paragraph says the position was unable to be filled due to staffing shortages. It'll be resumed, once staffing is full. That has been resumed. So if we could just update that to currently, that is back again. And so any other points of deliberation, or can we go ahead and make a motion?
I move that we adopt staff suggestions along with Susan Funk's, Councilmember Susan Funk's amendments.
I'll second.
Wonderful. So we have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Newsom, a second by Councilmember Funk, and that is including the operational addition that she provided the wording for, and then the direction to indicate within our education and reporting what we have committed to do for D20 and F14. So we just kind of put that as a policy, the things that we've already committed to doing. I will ask our city manager and our city clerk if that's clear and enough direction. If you would take yourselves off mute, somebody.
Yeah, it works for me. This is Laura.
All right. Wonderful. And Rochelle?
That works.
All right, excellent. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Funk,
Yes.
Councilmember Bourbeau,
Yes.
Councilmember Daris,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Newsom,
Yes.
Mayor Moreno.
Yes, ma'am.
Motion passes.
Thank you. All right, we were on to a discussion item for COVID, just something we put on the agenda each time. So if there's things that we as a council want to talk about or information for the public, we can do that. So I will turn it over to our city manager. You're muted.
Thank you, Mayor. I do not have a lot to report tonight that has not already been reported. As you know, the vaccination effort is underway. The county does have the capacity to do 15,000 vaccinations a week. However, we are not getting nearly that number of vaccines. So vaccines continue to be the lowest limiting factor in getting those vaccinations out. We will continue to fight at the state level and other levels to make sure that we can get those vaccines here into the county and the community and make sure that all those that want a vaccine do have access to it soon. But at this point, all we can do is be very ready to distribute them as quickly as possible when we do receive large numbers of vaccines. With that, I don't have anything else to report.
And I have nothing specific. Obviously, the numbers are trending down, which is a good thing. And Councilmember Funk.
Yes, thank you. In our under our consent agenda, we passed an item that allowed us to basically lend people to the county and get reimbursed for their services, and also allowed us to hire employees for the purposes of these and get reimbursed for them. I didn't want to take that off the consent agenda, but because I thought we could discuss that here. My ongoing concern is that business model seems to be putting a lot of overtime on paramedics and EMTs, or at least the assumption in the language is that. And, it doesn't take, a high skill level to administer an injection. And we've got a lot of people, medical assistants who are around in the community who might be able to do that. We've got a San Joaquin Valley College that trains people to do that. Are we able to, even if we're going to get reimbursed for it, I would rather have that be done at a lower cost ultimately to taxpayers. And give opportunities to people who need some work giving shots. Is that being considered?
You're muted, Rochelle.
the county and the team, the distribution team, are always looking for ways to not only administer the shots in the most efficient manner possible, but also looking at things like cost effectiveness and some of those things. So yes, right now they are hitting up the medical core quite a bit. These are volunteer nurses, doctors, medical technicians, and others who are administering shots, along with paramedics and others. We are also using employees that cities can, lend to the effort. Whether right now we have some of our recreation people who are working part-time in recreation, because we do still have some recreation programs going, and also at both the testing and vaccine clinics. So we're trying to do this in the most cost-effective way, but the big push right now is truly making sure that we have everything set and getting those vaccines out as quickly as possible.
I absolutely agree.
I do know that the county's ultimate goal is they want to get out of the vaccine business. And so to the extent you've got your pharmacies and those that can be ramping up, they will fully support that. But in the meantime, we're really the ones that have that capacity for that real push once we actually get supply.
Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem Newsom.
I was able to tour the vaccine center at Paso Robles Fairgrounds, and it was pretty impressive to see how efficient they're running. The call for volunteers that are coming in all over from the United States. So there is a huge community effort nationwide of volunteers coming together to just step up to the plate and help vaccinate our community when we do have supply. So I think there's so much more workers that are devoting their personal time in addition to really making it an efficient process. So it was humbling to see our community come together at that scale. So I do appreciate the opportunity for the tour.
Thank you for that. Very nice to hear. And with that, I will open it up to public comment. If there's any members of the public wishing to speak on anything COVID related, go ahead and raise your hand in the webinar, and I'll ask Luke if we have anyone on the phone.
We do not.
And Laura, have we received any public comment via email on this item?
We have not.
All right, and I see Mr. Osland would like to speak. We'll go ahead and bring him on.
Really don't have anything to say. Oh, I'm sorry if the hand got raised.
All right, thank you very much. All right, public comment is closed, and we will bring that back and now move on to council announcements and committee reports. I will just kind of go on my screen here in order, and I'll start with Council Member Darris.
No, I have nothing other than to say that that's going to cost Jeff Osland like $20 for somehow.
Nice.
I have nothing. Thanks.
All right, Council Member Bourbeau.
I thought that was Jeff's most succinct and insightful comment yet. Anyway, by the way, Jeff, I don't know if anybody's ever called me brilliant, so thank you. Yes, I have a comment. Our committee report tomorrow. IWMA is meeting, Integrated Waste Management Authority, and has a significant agenda item in that a year and a half-ish ago, the IWMA passed an ordinance that would effectively ban polystyrene or styrofoam, a number of styrofoam products. And then it was going to go in effect in April of 2020. And in March of 2020, as the pandemic came on, the board elected to suspend that for a year. So it's coming up on that year. And so a decision will be made tomorrow. And in the ensuing year, the board also, in terms of strategic planning, has opted to state that the IWMA should focus on mandated policies only, those things mandated by the state of California, in particular because of the advent of what's called SB 1383, which will impose a whole bunch of new waste diversion requirements on cities, haulers, businesses, et cetera. And so the IWMA will have a significant discussion tomorrow about whether or not the call it the styrofoam ordinance should actually go into effect, should be delayed, or should be rescinded. And so that'll be a significant discussion, receiving a lot of public input on that already as a board member, and that'll be a significant discussion on the IWMA agenda tomorrow.
I am curious about something, Councilmember Borbo. I spoke with a grocery store owner today, and they indicated that they're getting a member of the public calling, like asking about what they're selling for styrofoam, and that they're compiling a report for the county. And so is that just someone kind of doing that on their own, or is the county or the IWMA tasking a volunteer with calling all of these places to sort of police their sale of styrofoam?
Well, I wouldn't say police, but more the latter. That isn't, and somebody who has a very strong opinion about the ordinance and that it should go into effect, and was calling around to basically to gather information on what the, what stores and restaurants were doing so that they could present that information to the IWMA board. And so, yeah, so I mean, that was a member of the public basically just calling around and say, hey, what do you do? What do you do? What do you do? In order to kind of determine for themselves and to be able to pass on to the board that, hey, I talked to X number of stores and, X number of them already have taken styrofoam off the shelf, et cetera, versus, the certain ones haven't. So that was just a member of the public who has strong feelings about this was calling around to gather information.
Got it. Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Councilmember Funk.
Yes, thank you. I did my first meeting with the Atascadero Basin Groundwater Sustainability Agency last week. And there's been a very long process of data gathering and preparation work that Councilmember Fonzie ably represented our city in that. The agency is now moving to a new phase where in each quarterly meeting, the group is working through a chunk of proposed standards for use of groundwater to keep our basin sustainable. And those proposed regulations are then being put forward for public comment. So anybody who's really interested in the groundwater sustainability should take advantage of the opportunity to sign themselves up for getting information about it and to look at those sections and make public comments. That being said, the Atascadero Basin underlies only a small portion of Atascadero, but it doesn't underlie our entire water supply. And in Atascadero, all our water rights are deeded to the Atascadero Mutual Water Company, which is on this board and chairs it. So we're getting well represented in those concerns. Very briefly, tomorrow we have a meeting of the Design Review Committee that Mayor Pro Tem Newsom and I represent the council on, considering one residential property that is a multifamily residential property near Ash, and a commercial property that's near Bay Laurel, both of them on El Camino Real.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Newsom.
As Councilmember Funk spoke, we do have a DRC meeting tomorrow at 2. We'll also be evaluating its meeting time. So if the public wants to call in and chime in to something that time frame that works better for them, that'd be a great idea. And nothing else to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, the day we had our large storm, our power went out, and so I did not attend the Economic Vitality Corporation meeting, unfortunately. However, I did attend the SLOCOG meeting, of course, last week. So just a few things of note. The Office of Management and Budget is proposing a change to the urbanized threshold that we're kind of keeping an eye on. They are looking to move it from 50,000 to 100,000 in population. So currently when you have like North County, San Luis, South County, we have 3 urbanized areas. So we would have 0. And so we would then become what they call a micropolitan area. And that would reduce the census reporting that we have and also reduce us from some of the federal programming. So we are watching this closely and really, of course, working with Congressman Carvajal's office and others to make sure that, something like this hopefully does not happen. The TDA farebox penalty, you might remember a while back, we did get that penalty because it's very hard for us in Atascadero to meet farebox recovery. We were able to get about 25% of that back, 20% back in a grant to help us expand services, taking residents to Templeton area, say that, Los Tablas area for medical appointments. And then when COVID hit, they basically put a moratorium on that penalty. I'm told it will be extended through fiscal year 21-22, which is great. Speaking with Gus Corey, our words are escaping me, our legislative consultant representative, he says they are working on a longer term solution. This is basically something that's been in place since 1971, but there are a lot of things to consider, so we don't have that yet. We do have the downtown. Our downtown enhancement has been added to the list of regional priority projects for potential congressionally directed funding. So kind of sitting there, not like there's a ton of money flowing in, but it's sitting there. And then we've got some level 3 charging stations, solar powered, that are 22 new ones that have been purchased. So those are going to be up and down the county. And that is about it right now for SLOCOG. So we will move on to individual determinations or actions. And am I seeing any from a council? I have one. Oh, Councilmember Bourbeau.
Actually, I had a question for you, Mayor, regarding SLOCOG.
Yes.
Received an email, which I assume we all did, or perhaps all but you did, from SLOCOG regarding RTP introductory meetings, about them having meetings with us as individual or 2 at a time, council member meetings regarding, talking about the RTP. Do you know, can you tell us anything about that?
Yeah, so the regional transportation plan, that's that long range planning. And so really wanting to hear from, not only, public, but then you as electeds, what do you see as, priorities or concerns? I think they're just wanting to get that input from a very broad spectrum. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I was just a little confused because, we send you there. So.
Yes, I've already had all those conversations, but yeah, no, I think it'll be good.
Okay, thanks.
Awesome. So I have an individual determination tonight. I want to let you know the 3 additional members of the DRC who will be joining Chair Newsom and Councilmember Funk. And so first of all, Emily Bernack, who is our community at-large member. She has agreed to continue, so happy to have Emily continuing. And then I have asked planning commissioners Schmidt and Van den Eyck. Am I pronouncing that right? Okay. I forget if it's just the Van or the Van den Eyck. Wonderful. So both Schmidt and Van den Eyck have agreed to serve on the design review committee. And so Laura, is this just kind of simply like a thumbs up? I don't know that we typically vote on it. We just all kind of give a okay.
Yeah, I just need a voice vote that everyone says yes, that they are good, and they will confirm those.
Yeah, two excellent choices. Thank you, Heather.
Good, both good, very good choices.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you. I'm good with them.
Sure. And Councilmember Funk? Good? All right. Is that good for you, Ms. Christensen? All right, wonderful. Any individual determinations from staff?
No.
All right, seeing none, meeting adjourned. Good night, all. And thank you to our 3 attendees who are still here. Thanks for participating tonight.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Bye, Abigail.